name is Janice B. Gordon, and this is Scale Your Sales Podcast. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, listed number 9 of 43 best podcasts for every sales professional. I am Janice B. Gordon, a customer growth expert, recommended by LinkedIn Sales as one of 15 innovating influencers to follow. In today's episode of Scale Your Sales Podcast, I speak to Kendall Horner. Kendall Horner is part of Braveheart Sales, and we are partners in OMG, and we talk a lot about the real benefits of having data insights for sales leaders, CEOs, CROs, and what are the real kind of assets of having that real insight. We talk about the generational differences, and Kendall talking as a millennial, but also understanding, the generation before and after her as well, and some of the impacts in sales. So that was also part of the discussion. Really interesting when she talks about her Shiro. So you're going to absolutely love our conversation. My next guest is a partner at Braveheart Sales Performance, where she works with clients all over the US to solve their B2B sales conundrums and help scale their sales teams. She brings unique perspective in sales leadership as a self-prescribed boomer in a millennial who speaks fluent Gen Z. Love that. Welcome to Scale Your Sales Podcast, Kendall Horner.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's been such an honor to have you. I've seen you in the background, and we've kind of been circling for about 2 years or so. We're all part of Women Sales Pro, which has been renamed Women Sales Expert. But we haven't actually sat down and had a really good gas, have we?
We haven't.
Great opportunity to just gas it out, as they say in England.
I love it.
So, first of all, I'm really looking forward to discussing this subject with you. Generational differences in sales. Now, there's not all people I can talk to about this. And what I love is that you can bridge so many generations because of your background and experience, but actually you've got a unique experience. And so I really wanted to kind of hear from you what you're seeing as the differences. How are you being treated? Because I'm, of an age, and I will still get, because I look good for my age, hard on that, I will still get men that have been in the industry as long as I have, maybe a bit longer, but they don't look as good as me. And they're kind of a little bit patronizing. What can you teach me, little girl, as a consultant? I've been in this industry for 25 years kind of thing. So I can imagine that you get something similar. So tell us about your experience of being in sales.
Yeah. So, one thing I would say is I have been fortunate in my career that I've had, by and large, great people that I've dealt with. And so, by no means do I want the impression to come across that, it was me and it's been so hard. But I came up in a time when we were just starting to use Zoom and video. And when I first started with Braveheart, it actually played really well to my benefit that we weren't doing quite as much of that. And so we did more over the phone. And I found that if I could be intentional and have some initial conversations be conducted on the phone without video, it went much better. And I think part of that is probably because people didn't know how old I was. And I was able to conceal that a little bit, not intentionally, but it just didn't really come up. And instead, it was just two people having a conversation, asking questions, and kind of feeling each other out. And the age or the generational piece didn't come into it. And then I would say, as my career progressed and had some other experiences, it's certainly it's played a role. And for me, what I have found is showing up maybe a little bit differently, or being your authentic self, but having the conversation, especially when you're in a sales role, really be focused on the customer and asking questions and understanding what they need. Any, background thoughts or any concerns that they may have about you start to melt away, because it's not about you. You just happen to be the person facilitating the conversation and kind of guiding them on this journey. And so your age or your experience or how many years you have starts to matter less and less when you really make it about them.
Interesting. It's fantastic. Um, I came across this a stat from AMANY research that said that women make up 54% of B2B buyers under 30, most under 25. So this is the pipeline coming through. So 54% under 25 B2B buyers, while men handle 75% of business purchases over $100,000. So the survey, the research they did predicts that in less than 10 years, most buyers will be women. And I thought that was really interesting in terms of the workforce reflecting the audience, the customers, the buyers. So, what I don't know if you've come across this prediction based on the research of what's happening now, the pipeline, or whether you're seeing that or you're seeing the opposite in the current environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hadn't heard those specific stats, but I can't say that I'm surprised. I think I grew up in a generation, I'm a millennial, but I like to call a baby boomer trapped in a millennial's body. But I was really fortunate that I grew up in a time where I was taught that I could be anything I wanted to be. And it was more and more common that you see women specifically in the workplace. And I think that we're seeing the results of that. So more and more, younger women in their career and have intention of staying in their career, we're going to start to see those dynamics shift a little bit. With that, I think it's important actually for B2B sellers and B2B leaders that are leading sales teams out there, to be thoughtful about how you may want to approach those buyers differently. And in some cases, maybe you don't approach it differently. It's just, again, having a conversation, but recognizing that you don't necessarily know just because one generation may be the predominant force and the predominant people that you're selling to. You shouldn't necessarily generalize. And something that we really like to teach at Braveheart is ask your buyers how they want to buy. If you don't know, don't make the assumption. You should follow a predictable, repeatable sales process, but you should be able to deploy that among a variety of different buyers with different preferences, whether they are someone who needs a lot of information and want to understand all the details, or if they're a bullet points person and they really just want to understand, okay, what's the important stuff? What's the impact to me? And what do we need to do to move forward? And so regardless of if it's generations, men versus women, I think you have to follow a repeatable process and make sure that that process can encompass all types of people and their buying styles. And if you don't know, you should ask.
Yeah, excellent. I'm often saying to my CEOs and sales leaders um, questioning the validity of their questions and asking whether they know the impact on their key customers. And often it's like consideration. You're making the decision and we don't know the impact. And I said, well, how can you make any decision in your business if you really haven't asked your customers and you don't know the impact? Why are you making that decision, really? And often in sales, people make decisions in a vacuum, and it's all about them, whereas it should be all about the customer. So I absolutely love what you say here.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
I both of us work with Objective Management Group, and I know that you've been working in Braveheart Sales for many years and have reached many pinnacles. And so I'm really interested for you to share. How do you know you have the right people for your customers in the sales team to achieve their goals? And I know it's objective management, but I'd really like your perspective here.
Yeah. So we definitely lean on Objective Management Group for that. And really, one thing that's unique about us and probably not super dissimilar to you is that we really start there. So in our discovery process, we're asking a lot of questions and we're trying to understand the dynamics and the culture, and also what the organization's goals are. But ultimately, we don't know the underlying cause of some of these symptoms you may be seeing until we do that analysis. And so that is really the first step, is utilizing the suite of tools from Objective Management Group to figure that out. One thing that I will say that's maybe a little bit different about Braveheart and our approach is we have a strong focus on sales leadership. So that can mean the executive VP of sales, it can be chief revenue officer, but also sales managers. And oftentimes, so much of the work that we do is focused around helping sales managers be more effective and understanding why maybe they aren't as effective as they could be, and if it's even the right role for them. I'm sure you see this all the time, where it's really commonplace for a really successful salesperson done amazing for that next logical step for them to be promoted into a manager. And the problem with that is not all salespeople actually love coaching and motivating and holding people accountable, specifically holding salespeople accountable. And not all of them are well suited for that. Some of them maybe would be better off finding some other trajectory in their career where they can continue to be a producer, continue to be a salesperson. So that's really where a lot of our work is focused typically, because oftentimes that sort of situation has occurred, or there's just some gaps in terms of the effectiveness with sales leaders, and they've never been taught what it actually means to be an effective sales leader.
And it's incredible, isn't it, that the top salespeople are successful because often it's all about me. And the top salespeople leaders are successful because it's all about the team. It's all about them. And it's like the two things are opposing, but how can one thing naturally progress to another without any assessment, guidance, actions? So it's a bit of a shock to the system. I often find is that sales leaders are doing the job for the sales professionals because that's what they know and that's what their whole career is based upon. But it does nothing for their team, and they just burn out and run ragged. And so I love the tools, and I love the tools. One, talking about kind of women in sales and diversity in sales, is that the thing that really got me was that you can almost throw anyone at this process, And the problem is the effectiveness of our current traditional methods. So whether that's resumes, 20% predictive effectiveness, whether that's interviews, 18%. So it's so low, but these are the blunt tools that we're using. And we know there's like 20 different biases. And it's that bias that filter out what are potentially great people, and that's why the sales force, it looks very similar and it's not reflective of the buyers, and certainly the buyers coming down the pipeline. So I love the fact that you can give someone this assessment, and the assessment will tell you, is this person recommended? Are they right for the role or not? And we're not using any of the bias and those blunt instruments that have no effective predictivity to them. So that's why I love it. I want more diverse people in sales, but we really need to get rid of this first filter that filters them out.
Yep, I agree completely. We actually are eating a little bit of our own cooking right now because we're in the process of hiring some salespeople ourselves. And I'll tell you, it's been incredible just because we've been working with our clients doing this for years. But I understand the temptation in some cases to, oh, a new applicant came in. Let me look at the resume. And you just have to follow the process, not follow maybe some of those natural instincts initially, because it's so true. There's so many biases that can creep in and really alter the decision making process. And the other thing I'll say is we work with salespeople today and have done so for years and years. And even I, having done this forever, can be persuaded to, think, oh, this person's so great, and look at the experience and the background, and they're going to be wonderful. And the reality is, if you rely on some of that more traditional decision making, and if you rely on gut feel or whether or not you like someone, you are likely to be wrong, even if you do this every single day. So it's been great for us to just kind of have that reminder of why we use these tools, why we do things the way that we do, to make sure we are getting the best people and there are opportunities for the biases to creep in, and we're giving a great opportunity for those best people to shine, regardless of what kind of demographic they come from.
Yeah. I love the reason why I love the tool as well. It's got 30 years of assessment, and it's predictive, obviously, but on the job. What I love is that it's not only can you throw anybody at it, and within reason, obviously, but the thing is, it just makes your job a lot easier. Like sales leaders, CRO, CEO, it's like looking into a crystal ball that is cloudy. You have no idea what's in there at all. And you can imagine revenue is critical. It's the critical piece to any growing business, anything that you want to do. So if you have certainty in that aspect of your business, that this person is going to be, 92% recommended clients will be in the top quartile within 12 months. If you have that certainty, why wouldn't you take it? It makes you look good. Not to do that. And actually, I was talking to a group of CEOs, and we did a calculation on how much it costs them to recruit a person going through the recruitment process. What is that? 20, 30, 50,000? Well, this is marginal in comparison, but with the guarantee, it's a bit of a no-brainer, really.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Well, and it makes me think about just recently, we were working with a client that was looking to hire for a sales position. And one of the things we kept really focusing on finding within the OMG tool is commitment. And again, I'm fascinated by the different generations at work and how they relate to one another. And initially, I remember when we started working with this client, they were looking for, their thought was someone who was maybe of a younger generation because they were going to be easier. It was easier for them to maybe adopt new technologies and new ways of working. And what we found is ultimately they ended up with a wonderful candidate who actually is in a little bit older demographic, but had that high commitment. And so what we knew was regardless of if they grew up with a phone in their hands or feel that it's kind of second nature, they are willing and able to do what it takes to adapt and figure it out in order to be successful in the role. And so again, just another example of making sure that you're really hiring the best talent that can actually execute on the job, and potentially opening up opportunities to people that would otherwise maybe not be considered because of some of those biases if you weren't using an objective tool like the objective management candidate assessment.
Absolutely love that example, because again, it's all about assumptions, isn't it? We assume if we choose a younger person, they're going to have this. And actually, that's about our own personal bias, because we know of a certain age we can't do certain things. So, like, we're always judging things from our own perspective, which is completely wrong. Always, always. So you kind of need that independence where you're benchmarking the best, and it's just based on a huge catchment of people that are also in your industry or working in your sector, and it's got no bias in there at all. And if you make the wrong hire, you're talking at a minimum 100,000. That's costing you into millions if you have that hire working with a big client and you lose a big client. So the cost is enormous, really. Yeah, it's crazy. I love the example.
Mm-hmm. And we see it in leaders too. If you are leading a team and you assume, you don't know with certainty, but you assume that there are certain barriers for them or that the challenges that maybe you had are the same as they have, it's no different. And that's another way where I think the data that we can pull from Objective Management Group is so helpful to also help leaders be more effective with their existing teams.
Now, I love your perspective on need for approval. And it kind of gave me a different angle. There's 21 core kind of competencies that we measure against. We found them because of all of this data. But I really liked your perspective, because what I was asking was, sales competence and how that directly impacts customer experience. And I've never thought of need for approval as part of that. So explain that.
Yeah, so an example I like to use for how I think about need for approval is the concept and the kind of differences of being nice and being kind. And when you are dealing with a client and you are, in a sales role, I think about somebody with a high need for approval is going to have a tendency to want to be nice. They're going to want to say the things that makes the person like them, that doesn't ruffle any feathers, doesn't make anyone feel uncomfortable, versus truly being kind and having the customer's needs top of mind and making sure that we're executing on their goals and meeting their needs. Sometimes means you have to ask a difficult question. Sometimes it means you have to call out inconsistencies in what they said. It means that you might have to redirect them or say something that's going to maybe cause some tension. And in reality, that tension is going to a deeper, better conversation where you're able to really uncover their true need, or potentially figure out that you're not a fit. And then you're not going to waste their time, or maybe you can point them in the right direction where there is going to be a better fit there. But I think about that as truly being kind and being willing to do the challenging or uncomfortable things that might make you concerned of what they're going to think about you, being willing to do it anyway because you actually know it's in their best interest and you would be not serving them the way that you really should be if you don't ask that question or you don't follow that process the way you need to.
Yeah, this is a really interesting, Kendall. So I was thinking while you were talking, we're in International Women's Day month. We should have a whole year. So
Yeah.
I wonder if need for approval and your definition of the nice and the kind, whether you feel or whether you have seen there is a different level in men and women. Are men more on the kind side and women more on the nice side? I don't know. I'm really interested in your perspective.
It's a great question. And I'm sure we could pull some specific data and figure that out with our friends at OMG. So that's maybe a follow-up exercise that we should do. But just with the kind of gut feel off the top of my head, I think it might be likely that if you positioned it that way, if people really thought about it that way, they might say, "Oh gosh, yeah, like I as a woman, I want the best for my clients and I want to serve them." But in that moment, sometimes it can be a challenge to not be overly assertive, or if you've been told behaving this way is not the way you should, that could certainly be something that could express itself there and potentially lead to higher needs for approval. I don't know for certain though, and I think it'd be really interesting to look into that and see. The challenge is we don't have, we're not collecting demographic info with the OMG tool, but I'd imagine there'd be a way we could figure that out because my gut sense is that there could be a difference there.
I love data and I love that. I'm always asking questions that are not possible, especially from a diversity. I want, there's so much data in there, but, it's important for people to realize that this is anonymous data. We're not able to identify,
Right.
the people and whether it's male, female, for, obvious reasons. But, if someone was to go in, and I'm sure it will be possible to do research based on what's the likelihood with names, I think it would be really interesting and quite enlightening. And the way that we then can use that is how we need to coach people and coaching them differently. And also just having an awareness. If you're aware that people perceive a certain way, then you can adapt because you know that. I mean, it's often nothing to do with you, it's their perception of their view of the world, but you can adapt to actually make it a lot easier for them to receive the information. And it's just being aware of it. It's not like you're changing your personality or anything like that. So I think it's really interesting.
I also wonder, your question is a great one, and it makes me think if there would be differences when you look at the different generations in sales as well. Because I think about, some social and societal norms that maybe generations grew up with that are not necessarily the same today with the next, up and coming generation. But on the flip side, the younger generation has grown up in a world where you get constant, immediate feedback because of social media and all of the different ways where you can essentially be, checked by your peers and get that feedback for behavior that's appropriate and that isn't. And so I really wonder how that may translate to the different generations and how that comes to light in their sales.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I don't know about you, but I've found that the older generation, baby boomers, and I'm just on the cusp of that, they don't like role plays. Whereas
Yeah.
actually the younger generations, love it. They
Yeah,
absolutely
it's
love
practice,
it.
right? And if you haven't had as much life experience and getting to really do that in your career yet, the younger generation's like, this is great. This is an opportunity for me to do this and get that instantaneous feedback
Yeah,
from their manager, from their coach, because they crave that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So it brings us back to generational differences as well. It's really, really important. I was speaking to a guest that did some research around in their business. I think it's about 400 sellers in the business, different roles, and they have four generations to
Wow.
deal with, and the differences. And that's going to be the reality and that's in sales. Four generations in sales. And there's greater doing the research is how to bring in new people, because there's a greater segment that will be retiring at some point. But I thought it
Mm-hmm.
was really interesting, the trying to kind of deal with that, really. And the point was that we brought up in terms of not only how you coach them differently, how you train them differently, what they like and don't like, and preferences, and making sure it's an inclusive. I mean, so there's so much involved nowadays, isn't there?
There really is. And it largely, it's on leaders to figure that out, that the same tactics, tools, strategies, methodologies that you used even 5 years ago isn't going to cut it alone. So that doesn't mean that you throw that out and that these old methodologies for how you can learn and develop are no good any longer. It's just that you have to do more. You have to find a way to reach everyone, because everyone does not learn the same, and you're doing your team a disservice if you try to teach them and coach them and develop them the way that you were taught or coached or developed. You have to expand your horizons and figure out more ways to reach everyone.
And I think, that's a really good call out to sales leaders, CROs,
Mm-hmm.
CEOs, that,
Mm-hmm.
if you can use this tool to help you to do that, to really understand someone coachable, how you should coach them, given the coaching notes as well, how to make sure you have the right people in the right position on your team and really support and help them. And it's regardless of the generation, because it's by the individual, how that individual, what needs to be heard by you, how much input and feedback they need, and what type of feedback they need. This is a tool to help you to do that, so it helps you to look great.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's like, use that data, let's take the guessing out of it, and then it just gives you the opportunity to build that individual relationship and ask the right questions so you figure that out quicker and you can eliminate all that guessing and trial and error.
I love this. I love this. Okay, Kendall, who is your hero or shiro?
So my hero is a Shiro, and it's my grandmother on my dad's side, Joanne Gordon, or Joe Mama, as we all affectionately call her. So she's 94. Um, and in true, theme of what we're talking about with sales and putting others first, that's how she's been her whole life. So she grew up as one of 11, didn't really have a chance to be selfish or self-centered. It was always about helping the family and helping her mom and taking care of her younger siblings, and that really has stuck with her whole life. She's always been a caregiver to everyone else, and would literally give somebody the shirt off her back. But something that I've always admired about her is that carried through to her professional life as well. So she was a little bit of a Renaissance woman in that she had a career and worked, and she was in real estate and sold homes. And that was always something that, she's retired now at 94, but that she was always so focused on her clients and helping them and making sure that she's serving them. And it's just something that I've really admired, because I think while her life has not been free of challenges and turmoil, the way in which she's been able to go through life and maintain a positive outlook is because she's always been so focused on others. And that's just something that I've really admired. It makes it so she's a joy to be around. But I think it's also made her life happier. And I think that that is something that all of us should strive for more of in our personal professional careers, is kind of giving to others and focusing on others. And you'll be amazed at what you get in return by seeking to help others.
Oh, Mama Gordon, obviously
Yes,
unrelated.
that's right. That's
I
right.
love her. 94, that's amazing. What a
Yeah,
woman.
yeah,
Fantastic.
yeah.
How can listeners get hold of you, Kendall?
So it's really easy. You can contact us through our website, braveheartsales.com, or my personal email address is khorner@braveheartsales. That's KHORNER@braveheartsales.com.
Excellent. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, Kendall. Thank you so much for being a guest on Scale Your Sales, Kendall Horner.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Scale Your Sales podcast. If you like this discussion, feel free to listen to other episodes or watch the captioned show on YouTube and subscribe to future episodes. I would really appreciate it if you would leave a positive review on iTunes. Thank you.